is how you are will able to delay gratification. Delaying gratification is the biggest indicator of whether you are going to be wealthy or not wealthy. There is a test which was standardized in Stanford in the late 1960s, known as the marshmallow test. To make it Indian, it is how long can you keep a laddu in front of you and not eat it. If you can keep a laddu in front of you in a single room with nobody around and nobody watching you and watch it for 10 minutes without eating, you will definitely become more successful. If you do not like laddu, pick something which you like very much and which you cannot, which you would love to eat. And if you can sit with it and not eat it and delay your gratification for months or even days by not going for it, then you have the basic ingredient for success. For life, in life to be successful at anything and also wealth creation, you should know how to delay your gratification. If you cannot delay your gratification, however smart you are, how much ever knowledge of finance I transfer to you, you will not be able to succeed. If some of you smoke, or some of you have parents who smoke, or friends whom you smoke, just take the amount of cigarettes that they have smoked in their lifetime and look at the shares of prices of ITC as a background at that particular month. And instead of smoking, they had delayed their gratification and bought ITC at that appropriate times. The amount of wealth you would have created is mind boggling. If you do this for a period of the last 20 years, all you have to do is just look at the average cost of cigarette every month and assume a guy smokes 1 pack a day. And instead of buying the smoking that 1 pack a day, had he bought the ITC shares, look at the subdivision of stock or the reduction of face value, look at the generous bonus that ITC has given you over time. And if you had got and reinvested all the dividends back in that company, instead of just using the product, you had invested in that stock, the kind of wealth you have created. In fact, by smoking, all you have made sure is you have increased the chances of getting a heart attack and increased the chances of getting lung cancer. Whereas, had you decided to invest that money, you would have been part of India's largest food company today. This is as simple as this. If you can delay your gratification, because I don't smoke, so I do not know, but people tell me the urge to smoke is the greatest. Once you are used to it, you cannot do without it. So just do this calculation, it will tell you a lot. Lot of you here must have studied maths, and you must, with great pride, realize the concept of zero or shunya came from India. From here it went through the Arabs, they called zero in shunya as sifar, and from there it went to the shores of Italy through a man called Fibonacci. Today we know him as Fibonacci, and in Max you will know as Fibonacci series. He wrote the first text in Europe in which the Hindu numbers were used instead of the Roman numbers. Why is those so important? Before him, there was no concept of zero. And why is very zero is important is because there's a concept of negative numbers comes to zero. Today we talk of Ramanujam and the complex numbers and negative numbers and all that. But the truth is, negative numbers started with wealth. If I tell you negative 10 apples, you cannot wrap around your head with saying, 10 apple, 10 apples negative na ஒத்துக்க முடியாது. You will not understand how can apples be negative. Apple is a physical quantity. How can there be negative apples? How negative numbers got to use is when two traders were trading. If I have borrowed 10 apples from you and sold it, I am minus 10. So I have to replace 10 apples to you, the negative numbers comes. If my wealth number is positive, it's called positive value. When you have negative, that is my asset, debt is far more than my assets, then you have to look at me at negative numbers. We have a great concept in India and across the world. When you look at people's asset, you don't look at their debt. So, the real asset is what money you have plus what you have to pay back. What is the secret in this? The value of your asset can go up and come down. What I own can go up, what it can also come down. I have ITC 1000 numbers, it goes up by 20 rupees tomorrow, I'm more 20,000 rupees happier. But if I have so much ITC, I have an equal amount of debt, then my value becomes zero. Debt is a real fixed number which neither goes up nor comes down. If it has to come down, you have to take money from your positive value and pay it back for it to come down. Otherwise, debt is fixed. And what creates a big crisis at all times around the world is when the value of assets starts to fall. When the value of it starts to fall and goes below my debt value, then the people who have lent me money will force me to sell assets. And when they force me to sell assets, I have to sell assets at a loss. That's what happened to Anil Ambani, and that's what happened to Vijay Mallya. They kept on borrowing, thinking that the value of their father's assets will always cover their debt. What happened is the value of their assets dropped and the value of the debt remained where it is. They could not pay. In the case of Ambani, he had borrowed money in foreign exchange, so the value of debt also started to climb because he had to repay the money in dollars. When you have to repay money in dollars, when I borrowed it was 70 rupees 4 years back. Today I have to repay, I have to pay at 85 rupees. So for every dollar I have borrowed, the value of my debt has gone up by 15 rupees. That is a phenomenal debt. That means it has gone up by 15%. Not only am I paying interest, but I have to pay 15% of my capital more. So if you want to succeed, avoid any company which has debt. If you have companies with debt, then please avoid it. Don't look for a company which has debt because debt can kill you. There are only two classes of assets. They will tell you there will be hundreds of asset classes that people tell you. There are only two assets. Either you have equity or you have debt. Equity is you invest in a business, you get a share of your profits. You are investing in a fixed instrument, you will get back your money and interest. Fixed deposit is debt instrument, bond is a debt instrument. You are assured of getting back your money from the bank or from the company plus a fixed interest. But if you invest in equity, you also get a share of the profits, and as the profits go up, the value of the company keeps going up. There is a concept of intrinsic value, and a lot of people ask me, how do we calculate intrinsic value? You have to understand that the value of intrinsic value keeps moving up and down. There is no fixed value, fixed equation for arriving at an intrinsic value. It's a heuristic. I have to know how much money the company will make exactly over long periods of time. Very difficult to say. Like COVID comes up suddenly, the company will stop for 2 years, there will be no cash flow. All my intrinsic value calculations will go out of the window. The other thing is the rate at which I discount that capital. As the RBI or the Federal Reserve keeps on changing the value of money, the rate of discount also changes. With two unknown variables, the value of the intrinsic value of a company keeps going up and down. But you should be able to fix it to your comfort, a rough intrinsic value. My biggest winners, which all of you who follow my channel, be it Manappuram, be it Dr. Reddy, or be it Karnataka Bank, or whatever it is, have always been because I have bought stocks far below their intrinsic value and held on to it for a period of time. Markets are like a pendulum, it will swing in both directions. What swings away from the value in a negative way, and you are buying a 1 rupee stock for 50 paisa, sooner or later will come when that it will come to 50 paisa and go on the other side. So, one of the greats of investing is a man who died at 99 recently. Was a man called Charlie Munger. He said in his entire 99-year life, he made his money by just having 4 or 5 ideas. He would have bought 4 or 5 stocks in his entire life. And money is made by waiting. How patient you are, how long can you wait? Having put your money into a good idea, you should give it a time to wait. You go back home today and look at if you had bought Infosys in 1993, at the time it went public, and you just sat on it without doing anything, what would be the money? And if you reinvested all the dividends that Infosys has paid you, how much money would have you made? You can try it for Dr. Reddy, you can try it for Infosys, you can try it for Wipro. You will find that money is really made by waiting and being patient. Thank you. I will take questions now. People got too greedy, and for the same individual, all the 3 or 4 people started to lending money. But like all credit cycles, good cycles will come, bad cycles will go, and there have been a lot of wealth destruction in the microfinance. In fact, IndusInd Bank, one of the prominent banks, has been doing extremely bad because it owns Bharat Inclusion, which was originally SKS Micro. So I think there will be another 2 to 3 quarters of bad news in microfinance. I think up to 30 to 40% of their book may be written off, but all the promoters are very strong. They will put in more capital and the cycle will restart.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I guess you have completed your engineering degree. So, which made you to come towards the finance side of what was your journey in the finance?
By the time I finished college, I knew I was not going to be a good engineer. So by the time I finished my engineering, I knew that that's not my career. I started, but before that itself, since my parents were into stock markets, I had been working on it. And when my first 15 years of my life, I was into sales and marketing. So when I sold a range of products and services, I got a fair idea of how business is done. So an understanding of my father's portfolio and the way businesses are run was a natural fit. I think from 2002 or 3, I have been a full-time investor.
So my next question is that, what do you think about the use of debt leverage in investing?
Terrible. If you do futures and options, it's a route to ruin. Weapons of mass destruction.
My question is, you said a company without debt is good, but some companies like ITC, they have reserves more than their debt. Is it good? And other companies like Toyota, which has debt high, but the cost of the debt is lower than debt, equity.
Okay,
so these two conditions are satisfying, means can we buy a stock with debt?
So first of all, you should know who is the promoter, right? ITC, whatever little debt is there, will be payables to suppliers. Very little payable. It's a debt-free company. In Toyota, what has happened, if you have followed, I did a video along with Shashmat. The cost of debt is 0. So for borrowing for Toyota, the cost of borrowing is 0. So instead of raising capital as equity, they raised capital as debt. And they can repay the debt whenever the cost of capital increases. In Japan, because they went into a deflationary phase, the cost of borrowing was 0 for large companies. So instead of giving out equity, they loaded themselves on debt and grew the company. Otherwise, they should have sold more equity stock and grown. So the cost of debt even today in Japan is 0.1 or 0.2. This is still very low compared to the cost of money in US, which is 5%. So Japanese companies have a different role altogether. When you look at Japanese companies, you should look at the promoter, of how good the promoter is. Because corporate governance in Japan is not very great. And cross holdings are huge. If you look at Toyota owns a lot of other companies which you will not figure out. You will have to open. They own a complete car maker called Daihatsu. In India, you won't have heard of Daihatsu cars. Daihatsu is the small car manufacturer, is equivalent to your Suzuki. which makes cars like your Maruti 800 and Alto. They also are the fifth largest or third largest shareholder of Suzuki. They also own completely a commercial vehicle manufacturing company. Toyota is also one of the largest textile good machinery manufacturer. So this is what is called in Japan as a Zaibusto. It has various businesses. So you have to analyze a Japanese company completely differently. So in Japan, debt is the norm because interest rate is zero. What I told you is about Indian and American companies.
How American economy became the most powerful one. For example, we celebrate if they do an interest cut, and we always see what American economy is doing. How they became so strong.
Simply because they were not part of World War II. They were out of the World War II. America has never faced an attack on American soil. There have been three reserve currencies in the world. The first reserve currency in the world was the Dutch guilder, which was the global reserve. And then from there it went to the British pound. In fact, there was a saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire. And then when World War I and World War II happened, the British economy collapsed. And since America had never undergone any damage or anything in the war, and they had enough manufacturing facilities to supply to the Europeans. If the Europeans survived the war, it was based on American credit. And therefore, as a reward in the Bretton Woods Conference in 1945, immediately after the World War II came to an end, America dictated the terms and the rest of the world had to follow. So the impact of Second World War was not there. They had the industrial base, they had the money, and therefore the center of finance moved from London to.
Hello, sir. So, speaking of wealth, in the next 10 years, what do you see as the most promising industry for wealth creation?
The whole idea of my presentation was you don't have to look at an industry. All you have to do is look at stocks, get a fair idea of what is the intrinsic value, and buy stocks at 50% less than intrinsic value. Buffett is one of the biggest wealth creators, or Munger is one of the greatest wealth creators. The only one big technology stock which they invested was a company called BYD, which made electric cars in China, and that was Munger's pick. Buffett never worried about what is the technology or what is the future going to be. So he looked at a stock worth $1, and if he can buy it for 50 cents, he bought it for 50 cents. There was absolutely, you don't have to worry that I have to look at the next big thing. But whenever people have looked at the next big thing, it has destroyed a lot of wealth. The great railway stocks, railways did well, but all railway stocks lost money. In 2000, internet was the greatest thing. Lot of internet stocks lost money. The only big internet company that survived was Amazon. So now today people are talking of AI and EV. This industry will survive. The stocks which are all hyped about will not.
So good day, sir. This is a small note. So you said majority of the part of investing is about psychology. So I have doubts. So people change continuously in management. Nobody stays permanent in a particular company. People come and go. We see that directors, chairmen, CEOs continuously change every quarter or every financial year. We see that there is a general meeting stating that we are changing or we are going to continue a particular CEO. So in this case, when people are continuously changing, how can we predict a particular person's psychology and trust that particular company for long term success?
So the managers change, the owners don't change. A Tata has always run a Tata group for 150 years. And now it looks like very sure next 3 generations there's going to be a Tata on top. A Tata can have Chandrasekhar run a company for him. But you will always, if there was no Newell Tata, you would rethink whether the values will hold on. And you also have to watch what Newell Tata will do over the next 5 years. Just because he is a Tata, you cannot say he is great. It gives him a great point to start with. A Newell Tata can also be a Vijay Mallya. But so far I have not seen Mr. Newell Tata in a party doing up and down dancing and all that. So, nor have I seen his daughters do it, nor have I seen his son do it. So, Charlie Munger said a great thing. There are three L's: liquidity, ladies, and leverage. Leverage, liquor, and liability. Any management has any of these three problems, that company will not do well.
Sir, another small doubt. So, like, what is the secret of India's generational wealth? How can we pass down wealth to the next generation? How can it grow so that our future generations will have wealth forever?
If you can teach your children how to be responsible and how they have to earn their money. Ratan Tata was forced to wash aeroplanes and do a waiter's job to raise money. Whereas grandmother was living in a 50-room house in Bombay and had 250 servants. They had 250 servants in Bombay. In Bombay, they were living in a house called Tata Palace, which had 50 bedrooms. So from that, the chap had, and there was a Rolls Royce, which he himself says, there was a Rolls Royce going to pick him and drop him from school every day. For making extra money, he had to wash aeroplanes. If you can make your son do that, in spite of having so much wealth, then your son will be very responsible.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you spoke about how long term is the most important aspect of investing and for wealth. And looking at that right now, I feel like it is not the same as it was before. During your times, IPOs were more valuable and it had more potential. These days, IPOs and the state of IPOs in India has been really terrible for the past couple of years. We're extremely overvalued companies and the quality of the companies are extremely low. How can we create wealth if the only companies are still the only good companies are still the ones that were formed like 20, 30 years ago?
You don't have to, I don't invest in IPOs. And I am not invested in, my father invested in some IPOs, I have never invested in IPOs. So, Buffett never invests in an IPO. So, all you have to do is look at the market. There are 2,000 companies. You should find if you know if there's a quality of promoter is good, if it is more than 50%, he owns more than 30% of the stock, whether his principles are good, there is no debt. If stock is available below intrinsic value, you go ahead and buy it. Like I bought ITC at 130, 140 rupees. I didn't have to wait for an IPO to buy. I bought Tata Motors at 70 rupees. I bought Indian Hotels at 35 rupees. I bought Manappuram at 32 rupees. All this within the last 7-8 years. So, there are I bought South Indian Bank at 5 rupees. So, there are a lot of good value stocks available cheap. The question is whether you have the courage to buy something which is not fashionable. So I can't tell Albin, I'm buying Karnataka Bank, it doesn't look sexy. If I'm telling I'm buying him some artificial intelligence stock, if I'm buying something in microprocessors, then it is very sexy for me to say, I bought NVIDIA, it's very sexy. I bought Karnataka Bank, not sexy. If I bought Honda today, buying Honda is not a great idea because Honda is at less than 10 times earnings. So why do you want to go to look up at a company? You can buy Honda Motor Company. So if you buy Honda Motor and Scooter Company, you will see great value. So IPO is not the only place. Today IPO is used when nobody is giving me money to burn. I take money from public to burn is IPO today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you for all the participants.
Thank you, sir. I now invite Mr. Srinivasan, Department Secretary, to deliver a vote of thanks for this wonderful event.
Good evening to one and all present here. As the Department Secretary of Accounting and Finance Department, it is my privilege to deliver a vote of thanks on this special occasion. Firstly, I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to our Chief Guest, Mr. AnandSrinivasan, for honoring us with his presence today. I have to tell this, he was very sick today in the morning. Even then, he was very selfless and he prioritized transfer of knowledge to our students. I think, ladies and gentlemen, he deserves a round of applause. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Secretary Reverend Dr. B. Jayaraj, Principal Reverend Dr. Louis Saravakaraj, Director of REACT Dr. A. John Peter, Coordinator of Accounting and Finance Department Dr. Margaret Silvi, and faculty members Dr. Suma Godwin, Professor Nagamani, and Dr. Sandhu. Your relentless efforts and guidance have been instrumental in making this event a grand success. I would like to thank all the office bearers and technical team members who really made this event possible. Last but not the least, a big thanks to all the participants for your enthusiasm and active participation. Your energy and spirit makes the event memorable. And also guys, I'm very excited to looking forward to you all on a cultural event which is going to happen on December 14th named Very VDVC. Thank you all.